Folks, welcome back to another episode of Mayhem in the Midsouth. Today, flat tires and canals. The flat tire murders, also known as the canal murders, is a series of unsolved killings in Broward and Dade County down in Florida between February of 1975 and January 1976. Now, they have had a confession to one of the murders, and they've had a DNA connection to another. Now, in two of the cases, the suspect had deflated the tires of the victims' cars, which is where the name flat tire murders came from. Now, there were 12 girls or women, in some cases, that were found in or near the canals there in South Florida. Hence the other name used for these killings, the canal murders. Now, the profile on this guy was generally a male white, between 20 and 25, well-dressed, physically attractive, athletic, possibly married, very intelligent, above average IQ, and a sexual sadist. In some cases, investigators believe he used his charm to win over the trust of victims in order to get them into his car, which is the MO used by Ted Bundy. The first victim in this set of a dozen victims, she was 19 years old. She went missing February 1st, 1975 from Dade County. Now, she worked at a massage parlor. Now, February 3rd, her body was found in a canal bordering Broward and Dade County, face down in the Snake Creek Canal. Now, it was just east of Highway 27 in Broward County. Now, the police interviewed a woman who owned a Tiger's Health Spa in Miami. Now, supposedly that's where the victim worked. Now, according to the owner of the store, she'd fired the victim the same day she turned up missing. Now, this victim was known to hitchhike as her primary means of transportation. Now, according to an alleged confession from a woman, she said her and her boyfriend had killed this victim. I didn't see a lot of information on it, so I don't know what the police did with it or if they charged them or not. And if so, are they responsible for any other of the murders on this list? Victim number 2, she was 23 years old. Now, she went missing on February the 12th, 1975. Now, supposedly she was traveling to Coral Gables, and she was driving her cream-colored 73 Chevrolet Camaro. Now, that vehicle was found in a parking lot near the center of Miami, and her body would later be found on February the 20th in a wooded lot. Now, she was wearing her clothes. Her underwear had been pulled down. She'd been stabbed multiple times. Now, her car was located in the parking lot of the Gold Triangle store, which is across from the old Dadeland Mall. She'd bought a couple of records there. Now, one of her co-workers found her Camaro in that parking lot of the Gold Triangle. Doors were unlocked, keys were in the ignition, and there were traces of blood found on the steering wheel. Investigators did notice that one of her tires had been deflated. Now, that wooded lot was behind a grocery store at the corner of Southwest 87th Avenue and Sunset Drive. Now, the police are thinking that the killer used her vehicle to transport the body to the dump site, and that was due to the blood, dust, and grass found in and on her Camaro. So they're thinking after the killer dumped the body, he took the victim's vehicle back to that same parking lot and parked it. third victim was a 17-year-old. She was dropped off at the Hippopotamus Lounge, Hollywood Beach, about 1 p.m. on April the 9th, 1975. 3 days later, her body's found floating in the Snake Creek Canal, half-mile east of Highway 27 in Miramar Beach, Florida. Now, it appeared the cause of death was drowning. There was no obvious signs of foul play, but the investigators are thinking she was murdered. Now, there were witnesses that allegedly saw her at Lum's restaurant near Young Circle. Now, it's about a half mile from her house. Now, the husband's one that reported her missing. Now, the reason the police think she was murdered is because where she ended up and where her car was at, the distance was awful great. To have just left her car and walked to the location where her body was found. Now, her body was found in approximately the same location that victim number one's body was found. Victim number 4, a 19-year-old, he was from West Palm Beach. Now, she was seen on the night of June 13th, 1975, walking to a local laundromat. Now, 2 days later, she's found floating in the canal, parallel to Highway 27 in Broward County. Now, she'd been struck in the back of the head with some type of a blunt object and choked before she was thrown in the water. Now, there were various accounts from different news agencies as to where she was last seen and what she was doing. Now, supposedly there was a rumor she was in an unhappy love triangle with her sister and some fella. Now, this canal she was in was the same one that the other victims had been found in, close to the same location. Now, she had been stripped of her clothing. She had been sexually assaulted. Now, the next 2 victims, they were both 14 years old. Now, they told their mama, or mamas, that they were going to spend the night at a friend's house. Now, according to some of their friends, that's what they often told their parents when they wanted to get out and run around and do things they didn't want their parents to know about. Now, their bodies were found laying side by side along the canal, parallel to Highway 27, about 4 miles north of Andytown, Florida. Now, they'd been shot to death. They were fully clothed. There didn't appear to be any evidence that they had been sexually assaulted. Now, the weapon used to kill them was a large caliber weapon, somewhere in the range of a .45 caliber. Now, due to the large amount of blood found at the scene, investigators are saying they lay where they were killed. Now, there are reports that they were last seen near the intersection of Route 441 and Hollywood Boulevard, and that supposedly they were trying to hitchhike a ride up north to buy drugs. So the story goes. But now, their bodies were found just a few hundred yards from where some of the other victims had been found. There was one mention of possibly a white van that had stopped and picked them up. Our next victim was 14 years old as well. Now, she was found dead on July 10th, 1975. Family vacationing down in Fort Myers saw an arm sticking out of the canal there, just off of Highway 27. Now, that's just about a half mile away from where some of the other victims had been found. Now, she'd been reported missing 2 days earlier. Now, she was fully clothed at the time. Now, the witnesses that originally saw the body, they had been at the rest stop on Highway 27. Now, that's about 10 miles south of where 3 of the other victims had been found. In fact, it was literally the epicenter of where most of the bodies had been found so far. Now, they talked to the owner of the Magic Market. According to the owner, she'd been in their store and they'd kicked her out because she appeared to be high on something. Now, the manager said last saw her walking south in the direction of Riverland Road. Now, she was fully clothed, as I mentioned. Also, there were no injuries to the body. Now, there was a small bruise near her right ear, but it didn't appear to be a sign that she had been struck with a blunt object. Now, she did have some marijuana in her pocket. Now, some of her friends told her that allegedly, weeks earlier, she'd been smoking marijuana, that she became convinced that she could walk on water, and that she tried to walk on water at the canal where all the friends were at, and they had to jump in there and pull her back out. Of course, she was an award-winning swimmer, so makes you wonder. Now, the thing that had the police wondering was the fact that she was a long way from her house and a long way from where she'd been last seen. So the ME down there marked the death as suspicious. Our next victim was 27 years old. She went missing on July 22nd, 1975. Now, she'd met some of her co-workers. She said she was going to go to the 163rd Street Shopping Center, and then she was going to go to Parkway General Hospital to go see her mama. She never got to the hospital. Now, that same night, a security guard there at the mall called the police. They had a car towed. It was a rental car, and it happened to be the victim's rental car. And it had a flat tire, blocking traffic in the parking lot there in the mall. Now, the next morning, a surveying crew came across her nude body floating in the Graham Canal. That's in northwest Miami-Dade County. She was face down, clothes removed. She still had her sandals on. Now, she had been sexually assaulted and mutilated before drowning. Of course, the police are saying this killer or killers are very comfortable in this area because they keep dumping all the bodies in this same general area. Now, there's also a theory, too, from the police that some of these vehicles these victims were driving or would be driving were all rental cars. And at that time, rental cars had distinctive license plates, which would tell somebody, if you paid attention, that it was a rental car. July 30th, our next victim, 21 years old, she was shopping at the Hollywood Mall, which is no longer in business. Now, her body was found the next day floating in the Graham Canal, just 10 blocks from where another victim had been found. The only thing she had left on her body was a necklace. Now, she had been sexually assaulted and had suffered blunt trauma to the head. That blunt trauma caused a concussion, and she drowned in the water. She had also been sexually mutilated, very similar to a previous victim. In fact, police would believe this victim and the previous victim was definitely the work of the same individual due to the similarities in the MO. And of course, her car was found in that shopping center with the flat tire. Now, of course, the police, some of them thought it was the same killer. Some of them said it was several different killers. Some of the MOs were a little bit different. Not much, but some. Now, the assistant medical examiner for Dade County, August 29th of 1975, he said that 5 of the killings he thought were committed by the same suspect. September the 2nd, 1975, a 15-year-old girl, she was dropped off by her mama at a outreach center for troubled youths. Don't know if she actually met her counselor or not. She stayed missing for a couple of months, until New Year's Day of 1976. A group of snake hunters found her remains about 20 feet from a canal in a remote area of Homestead, Miami-Dade County. Now, because of the condition of the body, which was basically bones, cause of death was undetermined. October 26, 1975, our next victim, 27 years old, she was found lying in the bushes in a remote area of West Cooper City. Now, she'd been partially covered with sheets of a discarded plywood. She had been beaten and strangled. Now, she hadn't been in Florida just a long time. And she'd met up with some friends. She had checked into a beachfront hotel in Fort Lauderdale. Now, the police would later say this victim's case was not related to the other murders. That's not definitive. Our next victim was 17 years old. She was last seen alive at 1 p.m. on December 30th, 1975. She told her friend she was going to meet somebody. She didn't tell them who it was. And she was going to take the bus. And she would meet them on South Atlantic Boulevard in a few hours. She never got there. She didn't show up to meet family friends on December 31st. 2 days after she turned up missing, her wallet was found in the canal in Broward County. And her body was found in the Snake Creek Canal in Pembroke Pines, about 1.5 miles from where her wallet was found. Autopsy showed she'd been strangled to death with a purse strap that was found wrapped around her neck 12 times. She had lacerations on her face, which some people believe was post-mortem, after death. Now, the autopsy seems to indicate that she died 3 or 4 days after her wallet was found. Now, this victim was living in the same general area as some of the other victims. Now, for whatever reason, the murder stopped in late 1975. No other crimes have been committed that have been lumped into the category of the flat tire or canal murders.